Little boy said, "They took my sister. What these bikers did will restore your faith in humanity." The engines hadn't started yet. The street was still, too still. The afternoon sun hung pale above the houses, and the air felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. Then came a sound. Not an engine. A sniffle. A little boy stood at the edge of the sidewalk, his small hands clenched into fists. His gray hoodie looked too big for his thin frame, his jeans scuffed, his sneakers untied. He looked like he wanted to disappear, but couldn't. Across from him knelt a man, broad, scarred, covered in tattoos that told stories of pain and survival. The patch on his leather vest read, "Hell's Angels," and the name stitched above it, Ryder Hail. Behind him stood 5 men, silent as statues. Bikers, brothers, men who looked like they'd faced every kind of storm. But that afternoon it wasn't a fight that stopped them. It was the sight of a trembling child. Ryder looked at him, his shadow falling across the boy's face. The boy's voice was barely more than a whisper. "They took my sister." For a heartbeat, no one moved. The engines stayed cold. And yet, something inside every man there roared awake. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of doing what's right, please like, comment, and share. Because sometimes, even the roughest hearts carry the biggest courage. Ryder didn't speak at first. He just stared at the boy, Evan, as he'd later learn, and saw something he hadn't seen in years. Pure helplessness. The kind that burns deep and stays. Behind him, his crew shifted uncomfortably. They'd seen blood. They'd seen wrecks. But this was different. Ryder rose slowly, boots scraping against the hot pavement. He placed one heavy hand on Evan's shoulder and spoke softly. "Start from the beginning." Evan's voice trembled as he explained. His sister, Mara, 12 years old, had been taken. 2 men. A dark van. Near the park. An hour ago. His mom was still at work. He'd run after the van until his lungs burned, shouting her name. No one stopped. No one helped. The police hadn't arrived. He kept running until he saw the row of motorcycles, chrome shining like armor. He didn't know who they were. He just hoped someone would care. When his story ended, Ryder's jaw tightened. He didn't have to say a word. His men already knew what came next. He turned to them, his voice low and sharp. "We ride." That was all. And that was enough. Engines thundered to life. The quiet street exploded into sound. Leather and steel roared forward as if the earth itself trembled beneath their tires. Evan sat behind Ryder, small hands clutching the man's vest. He wasn't afraid anymore. For the first time since his sister was taken, he had hope. They rode in perfect formation, slicing through the city streets. People turned, curtains lifted, and whispers followed. "The angels are flying again." 20 minutes later, Ryder's phone buzzed. A call from Vince, his contact in the area. A black van had been spotted speeding past Route 9, toward the old docks. Every man there knew that place. Too many bad deals. Too many ghosts. They didn't hesitate. The bikes swerved off the highway and roared toward the warehouses by the water. When they stopped, the engines cut off in unison. Silence again. Heavy. Waiting. A black van sat parked near a loading bay. The back doors were slightly open. And from inside, a faint sound. A muffled cry. Ryder's eyes darkened. He motioned with 2 fingers. The brothers spread out, quiet, focused, years of instinct guiding every step. One man flanked the left side. Another circled to the rear. Ryder walked straight to the front, boots echoing against the concrete. The first man stepped out from behind the van, tall, nervous, unprepared. He froze when he saw them. Then chaos broke loose. The bikers moved fast. Too fast. Within seconds, the man was pinned against the wall. Another was dragged out from inside the van, shouting curses that died the moment Ryder's glare hit him. Ryder yanked open the back doors, and there she was, Mara, eyes wide, wrists tied. Tears streaked her dusty face. He crouched beside her, hands gentle, untying the ropes with care. "You're safe now," he said quietly. And for the first time that day, she believed it. Evan ran forward and threw his arms around her, holding on like he'd never let go again. The bikers stood there watching, silent. The world's noise faded, and for a moment it was just two kids, a hug, and a street gang that remembered they still had hearts. Sirens grew louder in the distance. The police were on their way. Ryder and his men didn't fight. They didn't boast. They stepped back, hands raised, letting the officers take control. As the children were guided to safety, Ryder watched them, a soft smile barely forming beneath his beard. His brothers stood around him, quiet, the kind of quiet that only comes after purpose. "No one should ever feel alone in this world," Ryder said finally. "Not a kid. Not ever." The men nodded. They didn't need applause. They just needed the engines. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low behind the rooftops, the roar of motorcycles filled the air again. But this time, it wasn't for battle. They rode slowly through the same neighborhood where it all began. On the sidewalk stood Evan, his sister Mara, and their mother, eyes swollen with tears, waving. Ryder slowed down, and for a brief second, their eyes met. The mother mouthed, "Thank you." The engines drowned her voice, but Ryder didn't need to hear it. He already knew. Hours later, the bikes rested in a perfect row outside Ryder's small house on the edge of town. The men sat in silence, the night air thick with the smell of oil and dust. No celebration, no cheers, just peace. Ryder leaned back on his chair, eyes closed. He could still hear that trembling voice in his head. "They took my sister." He smiled faintly, because today that voice had been answered. If the story moved you, if it reminded you that kindness can live in the most unexpected hearts, then please like, share, and subscribe to Tales by Nanya, because stories like this remind us of something powerful, that even in a world full of noise, humanity still whispers softly and acts boldly. Before we end, tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Ryder's place? Would you have ridden out too? That day, the angels didn't wait for applause. They didn't wait for orders or fame. They rode, not for glory, but for a little boy's whisper that reminded them who they truly were. And as the engines faded into the night, the world was reminded of one truth. Kindness doesn't always wear a halo. Sometimes, it wears leather.